Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our 5th season of On the Right Side of History with Kansans for Life. I'm Danielle Underwood, your host. We've got lots of great topics to cover in the coming months and a fantastic lineup of interesting guests. So if you haven't yet, you're going to want to make sure you are subscribed to our channel on whatever podcast platform you like the best. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and more. Just click the button to come with us on this season's journey. Today, we are talking about governmental overreach and efforts picking up steam across the country to smear the good names of pro-life pregnancy centers. Where is this happening? Why? And how? Here to help us understand what happens when state or local governments weaponize against the selfless work of their pro-life citizens is Myrna Flynn, President and CEO of Massachusetts Citizens for Life. Thank you so much for joining us today, Myrna.
Thank you so much for having me, Danielle. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Can you just tell us really quickly about your organization, kind of your focus and, how you're involved in this issue?
Massachusetts Citizens for Life is the state affiliate of the National Right to Life, and we've been around since 1973 in the days following the Roe versus Wade decision. Our two main focus areas are education and legislation. We work to inform the citizens of Massachusetts about the life issue, about the truth regarding abortion, and really every current event issue from the moment of conception through natural death, and really how our most vulnerable are impacted by just the way the current culture is so hostile to life, and also how our current policy is also hostile to life. And then also we let people know how they can get involved and what they can do, and why it's so critical that each of us become involved in whatever way that we can to ensure that our vulnerable are protected in life and in law.
Well, before we get started on digging into this particular conversation, I just want to say, first of all, how much I admire you, because you are working, when you talk about a culture that's hostile to this issue set, I mean, you're working in a very blue state, and you really are swimming upstream. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And I also, in our conversations, we've gotten to meet each other in person a couple different times. And I just think you have such a creative mind in the way that you're approaching some of the things that you're doing. And I love it. I feel like I learned so much from you, and I love having sister organizations that we can learn from each other and just really kind of inspire each other to keep moving forward and to do it with excellence. So yeah,
I would agree with that. That's the great thing about National Right to Life, is that because we have affiliates across the country, we can partner, we can collaborate, steal each other's wonderful ideas, and apply them in our own home turf. So yes,
and
I
keep on building, on building on them. Okay, so Myrna, you've been in your role with Massachusetts Citizens for Life for over 6 years. Is that right?
That's correct. I'm just starting year number 7 and couldn't be happier. We have a lot left to do, but we've also accomplished a lot in those introductory years of my term. And we've got good morale, a great team. We're a very small team, but we enjoy the work. It's, as you just said, it's an uphill battle, but we know that if we aren't out there fighting this battle, then nobody would be, and that's not acceptable. And so we keep moving forward day after day as a tight, cohesive team, and we have a lot of fun, and we believe that we're actually moving the needle, even here in Massachusetts.
Amazing. So one of your big projects has been to help establish a statewide coalition of pregnancy resource centers. And I'm wondering what led you to take that effort on?
It was really the reaction among our legislators here after the Dobbs decision came down in the summer of 2022. Once the Supreme Court issued that decision and overturned Roe versus Wade, the atmosphere here in Massachusetts became extremely hostile, even beyond what it had been prior to that point, to such a degree that the abortion issue, the issue of the legality of abortion, wasn't even on the table anymore. Rather, it was the existence of our pregnancy resource centers that have been around here in Massachusetts for more than 4 decades. They are small nonprofit organizations, and like pregnancy centers around the country, they exist for no other reason except to provide very critical support for women in need, women who are experiencing crisis pregnancies, and women who really do need help, whether that is in the form of advice, counseling, looking at their options, whether it's medical care during their pregnancy, following their pregnancy, job training, interview skills, and everything right through material needs, baby formula and diapers and car seats. Really, PRCs exist to provide whatever a woman needs to choose life, and to choose life with confidence and faith in herself. And because pregnancy centers do not refer for or offer abortions, they were seen as the enemy as soon as Roe versus Wade was overturned. And so Elizabeth Warren, the senator here from Massachusetts, was really the first voice to stand up and address this concern of pregnancy centers. And she said that not only here in Massachusetts, but around the country, pregnancy centers needed to be shut down. Those were her words. And so when our legislators here in the state heard that call to action, that call to arms really is what it was, then our pregnancy centers were victimized by vandals who have never been held accountable for their crimes. Our pregnancy center staff were threatened. Our volunteers were scared to go and serve at pregnancy centers. It became extremely dangerous for clients to even set foot in pregnancy centers because there was graffiti everywhere. There was broken glass blocking their entrance. And in a very stressful time, the last thing a woman would want to do would be to put herself in any kind of danger. And so it was just complete chaos. And we never knew what was coming next. There was this organization that was pretty active across the country called Jane's Revenge. And they were sort of anonymously involved. And so you had all of these really dark messages and threats coming from who knows where. And it was just this enemy that we couldn't see and couldn't fight. Our pregnancy centers were never set up to fight back against this kind of onslaught. Again, they're nonprofits set up to help women. So we watched these attacks happen over the course of a few months. And Massachusetts Citizens for Life said that, we as an organization, we cross the state, we have lots of resources in terms of messaging and education. As I said, we decided that we needed to step in and help however we could. The best way that we found to help was to create a way for our pregnancy centers to become united so that they could band together, support each other, and also keep serving women as a stronger unit. And while they were setting up ways to kind of work around the threats posed against them, Massachusetts Citizens for Life, as sort of the leader of this network, could work on informing the public and correcting misinformation about what pregnancy centers do, about who works there, about their mission, so that some of the threats that had been flying around could be lessened, and really the truth could start to be told, and women could keep being served. So we started the network. It was called the Pregnancy Center Alliance of Massachusetts. It includes centers from across the state, and it's been a wild success. And we just celebrated PCALL, as we call it for short, our second birthday earlier this summer.
Well, congratulations. That's excellent. Yeah, it is. We did see, what you're referencing there with the Jane's Revenge stuff and the graffiti. We saw some evidence of that here as well. Not as much at the PRCs, but others who were standing up for life back in 2022. Some really awful things that took place. And major damage to property. And so it's interesting to me that you're saying, and I agree with everything you say about what they're providing to these women. And also, it's interesting to me that they're also providing help within a community. From what, the PRCs here in our state are certainly creating community around these women so that they don't have to go forward alone, that they have that support. And so what I'm hearing you saying is that you were helping these pregnancy resource centers, these organizations, to come together and unify so that they were stronger united than they would be individually. I mean, it just makes so much sense. And I love how you aligned the missions. Their mission was so symbiotic with your organization's mission to go out and educate. And I think that was a really wonderful idea to unite your strengths. So all of that as background then for I understand the Massachusetts legislature, so 2 years ago, they proposed a law that was literally called the Pregnancy Resource Center's Gag Rule. And I'm wondering, and tell us, it sounds horrible. Just reading that, I thought, who would even think to propose something so awful? It sounds like a clear violation of First Amendment rights to me. But obviously somebody thought that they should propose this and move it forward. And I wonder if you could tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the attacks against our pregnancy centers really have been across the board and very organized. It's easy for us now to look back and see in hindsight that the state had a pretty comprehensive plan to shut down our pregnancy centers, and the legislative front was really the first front that saw the fighting. So the first proposed bill against pregnancy centers was really a bill that was aimed at how they marketed their services, how they advertised. And, pregnancy centers, if this bill had passed, and I'll cut to the end, it's a happy ending that it did not pass.
Thankfully.
But had it passed, it would have prevented pregnancy centers from explaining what they do. It really discriminated, frankly, against pregnancy centers because abortion facilities were not going to be held to these same standards, these same advertising limitations. It was told to pregnancy centers that they would receive $1,000 fines per violation, and this would happen if they communicated deceptive rhetoric. But the problem was that deceptive was not defined. There was no example given to pregnancy centers of what that might be. So it was just really poorly written legislation, and also just unrealistic. And as you said, completely unconstitutional. And the really crazy thing is that the authors of the bill knew that going in. And one of the representatives who sponsored this bill told a media outlet during the hearing, the reporter had actually asked her, isn't this on its face an unconstitutional attempt? Member of the media, best friends with the other side, right? And this particular representative said, well, it's more of a statement bill, meaning that, they just wanted to sort of stir things up and make it clear that the legislators were going to do whatever they could do to harm pregnancy centers. And, we just thought, well, a statement bill and kind of joking around, playing games is the last thing that a woman in a crisis pregnancy needs. But to the other side, that's just how they roll. Mm-hmm. So that bill was deemed unconstitutional. It was dead before it even really got out of the gate. So, but the thing is, and this is, I think, where other states should sort of pay attention to what we've learned here. The damage had been done because the media was all too happy to cover this bill and other local ordinances that were introduced across the state, and really help dirty the waters and smear the reputations of our pregnancy centers before we could really even get out and share all the good that our pregnancy centers do. And so regardless of how unrealistic this bill was, and other ordinances too, the truth was already discolored. And so it really was on us then to even work harder to correct the misinformation that the public was hearing and seeing rapid fire, which was very challenging. And, we were all on limited budgets. We have limited resources, but we did our best to correct the misinformation. And how we did that, and this is another suggestion I would make for others watching, let the women tell the story. What we did, we established a hashtag for our first public awareness campaign called ThereForMe. And we asked previous clients of pregnancy centers to tell the story of how they were helped at pregnancy resource centers. And at the end of each video testimonial, they said in a certain amount of words, this pregnancy center was there for me. And so the rest of us took a back seat. We were not the voices of this campaign. The women were the voices. And it was pretty successful. We ended up having donors support billboards with this hashtag. We had an online digital campaign, again, lots of video testimonials, and women were happy to tell the story. Women were happy to share that they obtained abortion pill reversal at pregnancy centers and had their children alive today because of it. So it was really, I think, beneficial that women told the story on their own. And really, legislators didn't have much in the way of response to that, as you might imagine. So
I love that. Really I love that you took lemons and made lemonade. That was
That's
fantastic.
Right.
What a great idea. And, what better spokespersons than the women who have benefited directly from this. So really quickly, I liked the point you made. I think this is important here for us in Kansas and probably many other states that are not technically blue states. We're more purple. We're red, but purple. We're kind of a strange state here. But I think you made a good point about municipalities being, getting kind of involved in this stuff. It's not necessarily even the legislature itself, but really, in theory, a city that's a very blue city might try to do something akin to what you're talking about here, where they're doing some kind of smear campaign against these pregnancy help centers. So I wonder, could you then talk to us about some of these other ways that they have been tarnishing the names of the pregnancy centers and even using taxpayer dollars to do that? What are some examples you've seen there in Massachusetts?
Well, yeah, so I guess hitting first on the local ordinances in individual towns. So that was sort of between 2023 through the middle of 2024. It was sort of like playing whack-a-mole. Because, one town or city after another would just introduce these ridiculous attempts to either shut down pregnancy centers that already existed in their towns or to proactively ban pregnancy centers from opening. And again, what really ended up happening was that the public got so outraged at what they were hearing, which was just a set of lies, that the public was all too happy to sort of fight back against these pregnancy centers, that they had nothing really to go on. They had no solid rationale as to why these centers were so awful, which made us think that, we needed to tell the truth about not just what pregnancy centers do for women and the services that they provide, ultrasounds and free care and all of that. We really realized that we had to prove that all of these claims were complete lies and completely false. So we filed several different public records requests with the Attorney General's office, with the Governor's office, with the Department of Public Health, and every single request that we filed came back with results indicating that nowhere in their 40-plus year history was there any complaint of merit filed against pregnancy resource centers. There had been complaints filed that were completely politically motivated. A couple were even bogus. We could tell that they were from fake clients or just nothing made sense to the pregnancy centers that were named. Nothing was legitimate. And so we started to publish that as sort of evidence for our side too. And those people who are in that mushy middle that we so often try to reach in our work, the people who have common sense, the people who do want to help women. 90% of Americans across the country hear about what pregnancy centers do, and they support that mission. And the same is true here, even in a state like Massachusetts. Reasonable people care about women and want to help. And so as soon as we started to tell the story of these public records request results, people started to pay attention and really kind of came over to our side to help. The timing on that was perfect. It was quite providential, because just as we were getting those results back, the state of Massachusetts launched a taxpayer-funded smear campaign against pregnancy centers. So this was June of 2024. This was announced in a very big, splashy way in front of an abortion clinic in Boston, with the governor's support, with the attorney general's voice as a part of it. And essentially, the aim was to use taxpayer money, my money, to inform the public about how awful anti-abortion centers are. And that was the language that was posted on billboards across the state. It was part of a pretty widespread digital campaign. It was on transit hubs and buses and trash cans in and around greater Boston. We saw flyers posted on college campuses, all with these faces of women telling other women to avoid anti-abortion centers. And it was egregious. And it had never been done before. I mean, it was just so unthinkable. That the legislature had passed this budget the year before, and this one particular line that would allow for this campaign to occur was buried deep in hundreds and hundreds of pages of the supplemental budget. Our legislators approved it, really not even realizing it was there, but it allowed for not less than $1 million of taxpayer money to be directed toward a campaign against anti-abortion centers.
Wow.
In subsequent months, we've actually realized through another public records request that the state has authorized upwards of $8 million for this campaign.
That's insane. That's insane.
It's horrific. It's
millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer money that's literally being directed to smear the good work of pregnancy centers.
That's right.
I just can't believe it.
It's crazy.
It's so sad
It's crazy.
to think.
And the thing is that our Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, at about the same time that she launched this campaign in June of 24, she also launched a nationwide working group, a reproductive rights working group with 17 other attorneys general in blue states. So they're working kind of behind the scenes in tandem with each other to sort of use the same playbook that's been launched here in other states around the country. Yeah. So when I say this movement on their end is organized, they're not messing around. And while we saw a little bit of a pullback, thank goodness, on November 6th of 24, we know that Governor Maura Healey is running for re-election. And as soon as the midterm election season starts to ramp up, we know without a doubt that we will see more of the same attacks coming against our pregnancy centers. So at least we're prepared. Now we kind of know what they're about and how to battle it.
I think that's a really good point for us to absorb here. We can't think of ourselves. We have over 50 wonderful pregnancy centers in our state. And, we've been able to have some great successes the last couple years, making sure that there's a tax credit available for donors to their work. We've been able to support what they're doing because they're doing such important, social service work. And but we can't just rest on those laurels and think, oh, everything's great here, because really, the better they do, the more a target they are. And as you said, there are people who are nationally organizing to try to roll this out across the country. So I do think it's very important that Kansans listen to this and realize that we need to protect these centers that are doing such critical work. So all of that is very interesting. And I know that you all fought back. You had, you testified and, you did educational campaigns, you did social media campaigns, all these different things. How is the pro-life movement fighting back at the national level? Because I believe you even went to Capitol Hill and testified there. Is that correct?
I didn't testify. I presented at a briefing on Capitol Hill about how our PRCs have been attacked here in Massachusetts, because it is news. It is sort of a warning, as I said, for other states to sort of pay attention to what the other side is capable of. And really, I think, nationally, because we have a new administration as of January that is more aligned with the pro-life mission and vision, and this administration is helping on many different levels in terms of the pro-life aim. Boy, it's great that they have our backs now, because under the prior administration, as you probably are well aware and you experienced too, we didn't have so many friends on Capitol Hill. And so it really has been night and day, just to have that support, to know that we're being heard. And so I think in terms of pregnancy centers, there's people like Representative Chris Smith from the state of New Jersey who have really stepped forward. And Representative Smith was actually at the briefing I was at on Capitol Hill back in December. And he's helping us to tell the story about pregnancy centers, the work that they do, the attacks they've suffered. And his voice is carrying weight because he is so well respected for the work that he's done for decades. So he's helping us to get the word out to his colleagues in other states so that people are more aware, so that funds can be set aside to support pregnancy centers at the state level, like in your state and others. And that's the thing that is just so amazing to those of us here in Massachusetts who hear about Florida and Kansas and Ohio and other state governments that provide millions of dollars to support pregnancy centers. Common sense, right? Yeah. And then to just realize the reality here that our elected officials are working day and night to do anything they can to close our centers. Really, what was interesting too is that here in Massachusetts, it's not just been a legislative attempt, but really there's been a legal attempt too. There have been several lawsuits filed against various pregnancy centers for various reasons, really whatever the other side can come up with. They'll sort of lob these bogus claims, but they're real lawsuits nonetheless that take time and money to fight. And again, our pregnancy centers are not set up for those kinds of legal battles, and yet they're fighting them day in, day out. But the thing is, when you fight a legal battle, you have to be ready for the truth to be told, whatever side you're on. And we are seeing that some of these legal claims that have been filed against our pregnancy centers are coming back and really backfiring. There's one case right now that the governor has filed against one particular pregnancy center. That PRC has filed a countersuit that actually has some strong possibilities of winning. There seems to be pretty good evidence. We've heard that the state and a nonprofit called Reproductive Equity Now have colluded pretty closely for many months to launch that smear campaign that we referenced a few minutes ago. And so we're waiting with pretty hopeful aspirations that things won't turn out so well for the state of Massachusetts. And again, could be a pretty good piece of hope for other states who might end up fighting the same battle, or might not have to fight it at all, based on how this particular case works out that involves defamation against our PRCs, because it's been so upfront and so egregious that the other side has kind of hobbled themselves with how bold they they thought they could be and what they thought they could get away with.
Yeah. So I think you would say that it really matters who sits in that governor's seat.
Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately for us, we're always going to have, well, maybe not always, but for the next 10 years at least, until we can really start to change our voters' minds and really build an awareness about what the other side is about, we're going to have the same kind of person in the governor chair, whether it's Maura Healey or not. But we're prepared for that, and we know we're fighting the long game, and it is a matter of time. It's just going to take time to inform others about what the truth is. But that truth always does come out, and we'll be here for as long as it takes, really.
Yeah, yes. Well, here in Kansas, we've also had a very pro-abortion governor for the last 2 terms, and we're hoping that Kansans will be waking up to that and choose differently next time around. So very interesting. I'm so glad you had an opportunity, just going back to that original question, that you had an opportunity to go and speak at that briefing and bring the facts of what's happening in your state that, it might not be national news, but it certainly matters to the entire pro-life movement, what you are seeing in your state, because we know that as they, find a playbook, our opponents will build a playbook and then they'll try to roll that out across the country. So it's very helpful and really instructive for us to know what could potentially be coming down the pipeline. So I'm going to think too, just into the future, should other states consider doing something preventatively to protect pregnancy centers that are operating in their state? I mean, they're doing this wonderful work, like you said, this, just helping these moms and dads and babies and families through those difficult first steps. Sometimes, if they want to help that woman choose life, and for a woman who raises her hand and says, yes, I want the help, they're there for her. What could states do as a preventative measure to protect that from having this kind of assault that unfortunately the pregnancy centers in your state have been dealing with? Any thoughts?
Well, I don't know if there's any way to prevent the actual assault from happening, but I will say that forming a network is, I think, one of the best ways that a state can be prepared for whatever is rolled out against pregnancy centers.
And that does exist here. I'm wondering legally, though, in the State House, when our legislature, there is a wonderful pro-life supermajority in our state. And I just have a feeling that, if there needs to be, it's sad that anybody would have to think, well, we better make this explicit that they have First Amendment rights. We need to ensure that they don't suffer from a city or a town, a municipality that decides we're going to start running this public service campaign about how bad these centers are. I would think that there might be some things that could be done. Have you heard of anything like that?
Absolutely. In the current legislative session here, we have filed a couple of bills that address the protection of our pregnancy resource centers, just based on what we have recently lived through. So one of those bills actually explicitly prevents any future taxpayer-funded campaign from being launched. So that is working its way through the State House. Whether or not it is popular enough to be passed, or whether Governor Healey would ever sign it, is something that we're not holding our breath on. However, that bill is a very useful tool to inform the citizens here about what has just happened. And, this bill is needed because there was this campaign that rolled out last year. So it's a tool to help people become better informed. The other bill that Massachusetts Citizens for Life has filed is written in such a way that it protects pregnant and parenting families. And within the language of that bill is a significant block of text that supports pregnancy resource centers, that ensures that those nonprofits remain open and available to women as choice. We hear so much about choice from the other side. And so this particular bill positions our PRCs as choice. we actually had a great partner in Democrats for Life when it came to writing the text of the bill, because since in Massachusetts there are so many, as you said, you've got a supermajority of pro-lifers in your legislature, or we've got a supermajority of pro-abortion legislators in ours.
Right.
So this bill was written by Democrats for Life.
Excellent.
And so it is using their, the Democrat lingo, the language that Democrats recognize and really admire, wording such as pregnancy equity and parenting, families, and just broad strokes that we think will be so innocuous as to be completely non-threatening to our legislators here. So we've got some optimism on that. And again, if that's passed, then that inherently protects our pregnancy centers.
The effect is what you want.
That's right.
So that's great. I think that's very, very smart to bring in partners like that. And we do have, the pro-life movement is not a monolithic, it's not a group of people that everyone is the same. We have lots of different viewpoints on different things, but we agree on these essentials, and it's important that we work together with all of our friends underneath this tent and do find that language that helps people understand our intent. We don't want language to be a barrier to the truth for people. So that's great. Well, Myrna, I know that you are a very busy woman, so I really appreciate your time that you took to explain this whole situation to us. I think it has become really clear. I know it's become a lot clearer to me. I'm sure it's going to become a lot clearer to all those who are listening about why it's so important that we not only praise the pregnancy centers here and support them and, volunteer for them, do everything we can to keep their work going, but we also have to think strategically about how we protect them from potential, aggression or potential smear campaigns such as that, and certainly protect them from having any kind of taxpayer dollars mobilized against their work or smearing their names. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm happy to have been here. And if anyone has questions or follow-up inquiries, I'll leave it to you to provide our contact information.
Yeah, and why don't you tell them your website in case they'd like to find you there?
Sure. So it's MassachusettsCitizensForLife.org, or the Pregnancy Care Alliance of Massachusetts has its own website as well. That's PregnancyCareAlliance.com.
Thank you so much, Myrna.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Danielle.
And thank you to all of you who listened today. If you learned something new from this episode, please hit the like button or leave us a comment. It costs nothing but a minute of your time, and it keeps this podcast growing. Reach out to us anytime at Kansans for Life by emailing us at kfl@kfl.org. You can also follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, anywhere you get your information. Until next time, never forget, the pro-life movement is on the right side of history. Stay strong. The truth will overcome. Thanks, friends, and we'll see you soon.